Today in Advanced Bible Study, we continue to look at the church in Pergamum, and we started with looking at how Jesus introduces himself to us. And he is the one who has the sharp double-edged sword. And we know from Hebrews 4:12 that nothing is hidden from judgment that comes with that sword, and it can even differentiate between the intention and the motivation of any deed that we are doing. And here for the church in Pergamum, of course, it is important that Jesus introduces himself as the one who will judge, and he will judge fairly, correctly, to the point, and specifically those who come against him. And that those people in Pergamum who are persecuted severely, that they should not lose their faith in regards of that those who will judge them based on their faith will be judged one day likewise. So we always see that connection of the introduction that Jesus gives to what actually will follow in the body of the text. So at first what we'll see is that Jesus has good things to say about the church in Pergamum. And that is encouraging because again we see, like with Ephesus, like with Smyrna, that here they adhere to the faith that is the one and only true faith in Jesus Christ. So they are true to the faith of Jesus Christ. Now the question is how exact are they? We learned that the church in Ephesus is very exact with following the scriptures pretty much to the letters and understanding it. Here we learn that the faith they have is exactly the faith that they are also willing to die for, and that is shown in the one true witness that has died already in the city of Pergamum. We don't know much about Antipas, but we know about other people who have died that historical documents are telling us about. So clearly Pergamum was a city where Christians died for their faith, and that is when you insist or persist with your faith, that you are not wavering from it. Specifically, as we know, in Pergamum there was a lot of pagan worship plus also the imperial cult, and if you did not swear your allegiance to the emperor, then of course it was the death penalty. You were judged for not giving your allegiance to the emperor. And that is probably what the church in Pergamum was specifically experienced, that kind of persecution, that you had to choose basically which way to go, and that could cost your death. We then also looked at what that means for us today, and whether we are in such situations as the church. And even though there are countries where that kind of persecution can happen, and when you basically say that you believe in Jesus Christ, that they can throw you in prison and even kill you. That is fortunately not too many countries in today's day and age. And we that live in the Western world that is based on Christian principle basically have nothing really to fear when we express our faith in Jesus Christ. We have to look very carefully then what could cause us to be persecuted, to suffer for our faith. And it creeps in more and more in our countries because we move more and more away from being Christian-led countries, meaning by the Christian way of life. And more culture develops into something that is more anti-Christian, but it comes in very subtle. And when we look at what is actually required of us as Christians, we find that there's not much that really Jesus wants of us. Of course, you can't follow any other religion. You have to be clear. It's only about Christ. But how does that behavior show? We are commanded to love one another. And of course, that is something in our part of the world that nobody would challenge us with, and that is welcome rather than it causes then kind of persecution. But we are also called to make disciples, and that starts with giving the gospel. And of course, you can offend people by giving the gospel, but the way that the Bible describes to give the gospel is that we are not to annoy people with the gospel, that when the gospel is not received, we should retreat. This is not something where we have to convince anybody, but we give it, and if it's not well perceived, then we leave. And that is something we have to remember. But much more important is that making disciples is not just giving the gospel, but then specifically following up, helping that person that shows interest in the gospel to tell them who Jesus Christ is, and to study with them the Bible so that they can grow in their faith. And that is a command. Now that is only when people are interested and they want to be Christian, and specifically when they made a declaration to be Christian, then specifically we have to make sure that we teach and grow them in the faith. And that often we already forget, but that is not something where suffering would come for. And also we need to look at how do we represent Christ well, and we discussed that this is mainly seen in the fruit of the Spirit, and these are very peaceful behaviors that we are called to represent. And we have to remember that we are ambassadors of Christ. We are not revolutionaries. We are not here to change the world. We are actually not of the world. We are of the kingdom of Christ, and that is not of this world. So we are basically representing another country. We are not of any of the countries in the world. So we should not get involved in worldly affairs. And that already helps us to see that in the environment that we live in, we should normally not encounter direct persecution just because we are a Christian. And being an ambassador means that also we represent Christ through our behavior, and that has to show. And again, this is a behavior that is typically not offending anybody. And we are often not very wise in how we represent Christ, because we try to fight for our faith, and that is never required by Christ. We have to stay true to it, not engage in anything that comes against that belief, but we are not here to change the world into being Christian other than giving them the gospel. So that was it for today. Next week, we'll continue to see what is actually Jesus saying about the negative sides that he has for the church in Pergamum. See you then.